Alrighty, I think we're live. Hi everybody, I'm Dylan, I'm a game designer here at Dinosaur Polo Club, and welcome to Career Conversations, a part of this year's online-only digital New Zealand Games Festival. We're going to have a bunch of people on tonight, we're going to have some quick fire questions, learning a lot about getting into the industry and what you can do to get your career started. I'm joined here by Chantel. I work with Chantel, which is awfully convenient for me. So to start with, how about you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Hi everyone, so I'm Chantel, I'm the CEO at Dinosaur Polo Club, and we're very thankful to have Dylan joining us tonight as host. He's coming as emergency host because our lovely host Chelsea Rapp is unfortunately sick.
We hope you get better soon.
Yeah, we hope Chelsea gets better soon, but thank you so much Dylan for hosting tonight, we really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's awfully convenient for me.
Yes, very convenient.
Right, so let's crack into it. First question. Do you want to talk us a little bit through Dinosaur Polo Club's hiring process and how it all goes down?
Sure thing. So this is the type of thing that I know as a student I would have found really handy to know, just to know what I was kind of in for, what the process would be like. And in the games industry, it can be a little bit different. So at Dinosaur Polo Club, we actually have 3 different interviews. The first is generally initial phone call, and it's just a chance to get to know you. It's nothing too scary. It's just a little bit of a chat, and it's normally about 15 to 20 minutes long. The next is more of a technical skills interview. So if you're a programmer, then generally we'll do a kind of conversation, test in the studio, but really it's just about learning how you think and how you approach problem solving. There is no one right answer, and for our artists it's similar, but often we'll give them a take-home project to do. We try not to give them a really short deadline. We give them as much time as they need, particularly if people have young kids. It's not easy for them to fit those things in, so we try to be really flexible. And for the third one, that's just a chance for us to get to dig into your teamwork skills, what they call soft skills, so those interpersonal skills. We like to call them core skills here at Dinosaur Polo Club, and that is a really good opportunity for us to get to know you and get to know how you might work with the people that are already here. So what we're always looking for is someone that has potential, and also has a perspective that they're adding to our studio, but will work positively and collaboratively with the team. So we want positive disruption, but not negative disruption. So that's a little brief overview of our process. It tends to happen over around a month. So there'll be sort of one interview a week or so, and then we'll review after each one. And anyone who gets an interview here will generally always end up having the final interview with me. And it's also a chance for you to get to know the studio and see if you actually want to work with us and ask us any questions along the way. So that's a little overview of our process. It's a little structured, but we do try to be really communicative and make it as comfortable as possible, because we all know what it's like being a person on the other side of the table, and we want to make it as easy as it can be for everyone.
Yeah, obviously I'm a little biased, but I can confirm it's not as scary as it sounds. It's super communicative.
I think we talked about Disney quite a lot in the interview.
Yeah, if you want an interview where you're talking about going to Disneyland, then yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Or Lego, yeah, it definitely comes up.
Well, on a completely different tangent to Disneyland, assuming the interviews all go well, what can people expect joining Dinosaur Polo Club within the first few months, that kind of thing? Yeah,
so every studio is a little bit different. So it's good to chat to them about how they do their processes so you can get a little bit of a heads up. But here, what we like to do is try and have a really thorough onboarding process. Something that I was told when I joined the team, which really helped me feel comfortable, was that they thought it would take me 6 months to a year to feel fully settled into all the parts of my role, and that was totally fine to just ask as many questions as I needed to along the way. And that made me feel really safe to be able to ask for help for different things I didn't know, and that it would never be a bother. So we try to build quite an extensive onboarding plan, and that typically goes for about 3 months, and we have lots of check-ins throughout there. So first day, people start with me, and we go through our studio handbook, which has a lot of our values as a studio and how we look after our dinos, how we approach our production scheduling and all of that. And it just gives you a really good snapshot of the culture at Dinosaur Polo Club. And then generally you'll do a bit of onboarding with someone from your department, maybe the lead of that department, and they'll give you a bit of an overview, just some taster, maybe a few documents that you can read over that first week. We also set up some one-on-ones with team members, and that's just to get a chance to get to know other people. So it's about 15 minutes with each person in the team. It's spread over a couple of weeks, and they just show you what they're working on so that you can have that proper person-to-person connection time and get to know everyone's names, personalities, interests, stuff like that. We also set you up with our producer who will run through the timeline for the coming year, what we're doing in all of our different projects. Just gives you a really good high-level oversight as to the day-to-day, the month-to-month, the year-to-year here. So yeah, generally we try to make sure it's really thoughtful. We put it all in their calendar so that they can see everything that's coming up, and it's not guesswork. And then at the end of every week for the first month, people have a check-in with me just to see how they're doing, and if they need anything, they feel fully comfortable. And then after the first month, we move that to about once a month with their lead, and then once every couple of months with me. We do lots of one-on-ones here because we like people to have lots of different support people in the studio, so that if they're less comfortable talking with one person than another, they've always got advocates that can be there to help them along the way.
Cool. That was a really thorough answer. I'm very impressed. So I should note as well that if you're in the chat and you've got questions that you'd like to ask Chantal, feel free to pop them in there and we'll see if we can get to them if we have some time. We're going to ask each person as we go, and then we'll also have a little bit of time at the end. Fingers crossed. See how we go.
Yeah, ask away.
So I guess this is probably the big one that most people want to know, but how should one prepare for an interview, or perhaps what things should they avoid in an interview? Just any of that general advice you've got.
Yes, well, with all things, the first impression is important, and I would say cover letters are actually very important. I read every single cover letter that comes in, so does generally the lead of the department that you're applying for. And I think it really does make a difference if you take the time to get to know the company that you're applying for a role with. Real simple thing, please don't put dear sir / madam at the top of your cover letter. Even if you get the name of the person wrong, we actually really appreciate that you've put the effort in to go to our website and have a look who it might be addressed to. But what you can also do for like a company like us, we have fiction names for our team. You can say, hey Dinos, or hey team, something a little bit more personable, I think makes the difference. Now, of course, it depends what industry you're applying in. If you're applying in a more formal, like government entity, then you might want to have quite a formal cover letter. But for us, and probably a lot of the games industry, we like to get to know a little bit of your personality and who we might be working with. So we really appreciate when people include a little anecdote or two about who they are and why they've been drawn to the job. So cover letter, very important. Because we're a smaller studio, every single person that we add to our team has a real big impact on all the people around them. So we hope that each person we hire really wants to be here, and we kind of want to see that from that initial impression. And then things that maybe people feel the pressure to do but don't need to do, particularly in a junior role. Something that we have at the studio a document called the Tiers of Professional Development, and that's something we spend a bit of time working on, where we talk about what it means to be a junior, what technical and core skills, soft skills, those interpersonal skills, we kind of hope that you'll be working through, what it means to be an intermediate and what it means to be a senior. To be a senior here, actually, one of the things in that list is that you feel really comfortable admitting your mistakes and saying, oh, I didn't get that right. I'll do it this way next time, and just owning up to the things that you're not getting right the whole time. We do not expect as a junior that you will know everything, and so you don't need to be perfect. We actually really love to look for people who seem self-aware and able to admit when things didn't go right, but what they learned from that experience. So that's a tip that I definitely say to people. Don't feel the need to gloss over the mistakes that you've made, because actually that shows a lot of growth that you have learned from those mistakes. So you can definitely include them in your interview conversations. And it avoids that feeling of needing to be overly confident, which I think a lot of us feel isn't very authentic. So I just say, be your authentic self. That really shines through. And when we're talking to people, we do try to make it a really comfortable conversation. So hopefully, after being in the room for just a few minutes, you'll feel pretty at ease anyway.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that we're people just as much as you all applying for these roles. So admitting mistakes or just being able to talk about those things is really important. So that's really nice.
A bit of banter is always fun.
Yes, Disneyland and all.
Yeah, and if that helps, I mean, I interviewing people still feel nervous after all these years interviewing people. You know, it's just this interesting, very formal situation that's not comfortable for anyone. So it's actually not just you that might be impacted by that. It's actually everyone that kind of has those experiences. And as I said earlier, we've all been on the other side of the table. We know what it's like. I remember being interviewed by my previous job by a panel of 4 people, and it was super formal. And at the end, I walked out of the room and thought, I have no idea how I did. I got no impression from them at all. And then they called me that afternoon and offered the job. And I was like, are you sure? You really didn't give me that feeling, but we do try to make it much more comfortable than that. That was a very different industry, a very formal, more government industry.
I feel like you didn't talk about Disneyland in that interview.
We did not talk about Disneyland in that interview. No, we didn't.
All right, well, I think that's all the time we've got for you, but thank you so much for joining us.
No
and
worries.
If we have time at the end, we might steal you back for some questions, but
That
we'll just
sounds
see
wonderful.
how we go.
Yeah, I'll see you for Q&A. And I'm just going to moonwalk out of here.
I like how you called it out just a minute. All righty, so thanks again, Chantal. And next up, we're going to be bringing our next guest, Audrey. You want to jump on in?
Hi, I'm Audrey Tops Harjo. I'm an independent feature filmmaker and founder of InclusionFX. I was the COO at A44 Games. I have had many lives. I've also worked in high-end visual effects. I worked at Sony Pictures, Rhythm and Hues. I worked at Weta Digital, Weta FX now. So I kind of span the gauntlet of working in the entertainment industry. I've been working in the entertainment industry for about 30 years. So I've seen it all, done it all. Yeah.
Fabulous. You've got lots of experience to draw on there. It's amazing. Right. Well, I was going to ask you to introduce yourself, but you've nailed that. So I'll crack right into it with some questions. So the first thing I want to ask is, do you want to maybe give an overview, since you've got such a wide range of experience, an overview of perhaps different possible roles that someone could get in the industry when they're just starting out?
Of course. So in the feature film industry, you want to start out as a production assistant. That is where you're able to get wide exposure to things that are happening on the set. There's also an office PA, so you get to know the coordinators and how the logistics are made for the feature film. And also each department has its own production assistant. So there's the art department, there's the camera department, there's the electric department. So it's really, you're there to kind of be there to learn quickly and soak up as much as possible and to gain a network. For visual effects, there's also different routes. I remember back in the day, you're a rotoscope artist. Rotoscope artists were the folks that painstakingly cut out all the wonderful little images on the screen so to use it as a plate to insert the visual effects. There's also an office PA there as well in visual effects, helping the production team, with paperwork and runs and things. And also you can be a runner. And so runners would go, especially for Weta FX, there were different buildings and you had to go from one to the other just to make sure all the teams were healthy, making sure everybody had their cup of coffee and snacks. I mean, that was really important because also you had exposure to the various departments. Then also on the artist side, you can be a concept artist. So if you start off in traditional art, that's always great. And that's also all the disciplines. You can start out as a concept artist or storyboard artist, which is really fantastic. So shifting into games. I know there's a media design school up in Auckland, which is also a wonderful hotbed of great experience where you learn how to work in a team. You get to do all the jobs and figure out what your favorite one is. And you get to apply. I know at A44, I think we rated media design school last year. I think we hired almost between 10 and 8 people there. And we just hired their team because they worked together and they kind of came in as a cohort, which was really great and supportive for them. And so also there's a concept art and games as well, like Creature and UI and all those user interface, for the layman's, all that great stuff. And then also you can have a junior designer, which of course you know all about that, Dylan. You can also have a junior animator. There's also there's editorial and marketing. So just the sky's the limit. Also on the production side, there's either a PA or a coordinator, depending on how big your team is. And so those are the from film to visual effects to games, and because they're all kind of mushing together, they're all applicable.
Mm-hmm. And you've mentioned a whole bunch of roles there, which is fabulous. I was curious whether you've got any advice for someone wanting to kind of get their foot in the door and you get into those roles. Have you got any specific things that you want to call out?
Yeah. So for me, always networking is your key. I can't stress enough for people who are starting out to kind of be involved in things like this. If you're able to, the world is opening up now to go actually see the developers in person, go to events, I need New Zealand Game Developers Conferences coming up soon, going in there, hearing those amazing artists and going up to them after and say, hey, can we grab a cup of coffee? I want to hear what you do. And really figuring out, because there's so many jobs, to see where you fit. I would really stress enough to kind of get out there. I know it's hard for introverts and artists, but to kind of get out there and practice and know exactly who you are and what you want to do. I think your enthusiasm and your passion will take you very, very far.
Yeah, I distinctly remember actually, prior to Dinosaur Polo Club, I spent a few years at PikPok, and I went up to GDC while I was still studying at the time. And you can spot a lot of game devs a mile away because there's often the jerseys for the different studios. So it's really easy to find people and go and nab someone to talk to. So absolutely, I agree. Just go and do it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish juniors in the industry knew, they knew beforehand, or things that they did differently?
I think for me, it's just being open. It's a wonderful time in young people's lives when you're between, your teens and your early to late 20s, because you know everything. You're masters of everything. You know everything. You don't know that you don't know. And it's a wonderful time to kind of use that to fuel you. So it's true. It's amazing. Like, because that's where you're able, you don't have the slings and arrows of your older life, right? Partners or kids. It's really that time to explore and know exactly, finding your passion and leaning into that, knowing exactly who you are right now, who you want to be, and just kind of going for it. I think the enthusiasm and really knowing what you're passionate about, because you want to build a career, and careers are not straight lines. They kind of ebb and flow. And being resilient and persevere and kind of being really clear about what your passion is will be able to guide you through those detours. Because as my career can attest, I've done many things, but the through line is actually making wonderful things and working with amazing people, and all those disciplines have all those elements in it. And because I was so clear upon my strength, which is intense organization and working really hard under pressure, and being able to think in 3 dimensions and pull complex things and make a simple through line so people can understand and create amazing things and give them space to do that. That's always been my passion. And so, that's really helped me along the way. And so I would definitely lean into that wonderful getting out there to meet people and to finding your passion. And also work-life balance. That's the other thing. The people, when you're a little kid, you got to find that balance. You got to find it early, right? Because you get so excited about it and passionate about the work, as well you should, because that's what comes through and shines through what people are paying their money and their time on. But making sure you save space for yourself, finding for your mental health and your physical health, and making sure that you take care of yourself is paramount and key starting out.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, a lot of people talk about in the games industry, crunch and that kind of thing. But in reality, you can also just burn yourself out even when you're at uni, just from your sheer passion. So being aware of that is very important in finding that balance, for sure.
100%.
You also touched a lot on the wide amount of things you've done in your career. I wanted to actually end our segment by asking, what part of your career are you most proud of?
Oh my gosh, I had the same answer every single time. Like when I was starting out, I was, as a live action, I was so lucky to be able to work at Sony Pictures ImageWorks in Los Angeles, and they were just starting out. You're talking about the late 1900s, you guys, for all you youngsters out there, when when it was just, just the big ones, the big three. And the team from ILM had come down to Sony Pictures. They had just won an Academy Award for Forrest Gump. And we were doing Contact with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. And that was the first job that I was in charge of the digital running of that from end to end, from filming in to filming out, and all those people in between. I was all of 27 years old, and I was responsible for like 165 people. And I had these amazing artists and amazing supervisors, and they're still killing it to this day. And that was just the best education ever. Nothing was ever as hard as that. Ever, ever, ever. But it's the most rewarding, and it tickles me that it comes on every single year in New Zealand. It's so adorable. I love it. Something you've done, way back in the day is still being lauded. I knew it was something special when we were doing it. And to all my wonderful coworkers, it was just so incredible kind of to work in that environment. And we're friends to this day because it was such a crucible to work through, but it was amazing. Amazing time for me. My favorite movie of all time.
It's especially nice to feel like you're working on something special and then have the reception of everyone love it as well. It's just, there's nothing quite like it, right?
It's true. I would not recommend the 7 days a week for 3 months. Absolutely not. Would not recommend.
Do as I say, not as I do.
But it was so cute because at that time there was a little company in New Zealand called Weta that was doing some of those shots. Like, where's that? So it's like, just it was so far away. It was like, did you frighteners? What is happening over there in New Zealand? Where is that?
Well, now you know, that's for sure.
I know. Back again. There and back again. That's my Hobbit. Backup. Yeah.
Perfectly done. Love it. Awesome. So thank you so much, Audria. If we have time again, everyone who's watching, we might have Audria back for some questions at the end. But for now, we're going to move on to our next guest. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. And next we have Steph coming in, hopefully. Loading on up. Hey, buddy. Oh, you're muted.
I should unmute.
There you go. All right. So to kick us off, how about you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Steph. I'm the UI artist and designer at Runaway Play down in Dunedin, which has been a role that I've been in for about 6 months or so. And then I'm also, funnily enough, the creative director of NZGF, the festival, and Play by Play, and all of that kind of stuff that's happening right now. So yeah, that's me.
Lovely. And you mentioned obviously only 6 months at Runaway so far. So I wanted to actually ask sort of if you could speak a little bit about your career path, the trajectory that got you where you are.
Yeah, for sure. It's been winding, shall we say. So I studied design at Victoria University in Wellington, and in fact kind of kept studying design. So I did my master's and focused on like designing for new technologies like AR, VR, all of that kind of stuff. And sort of, yeah, spent a little bit of time doing academia things, so some research, a lot of tutoring, a little bit of lecturing and that kind of thing, which was really fun. But in the end, stepped away from that and then worked for a couple of years in a sort of agency design environment to a point. It was a company that did exhibition design as well as interactive design for museums and physical spaces as well. And that did that for a couple of years, and then at the end of last year ended up with this opportunity to join Runaway and kind of jumped with 2 feet, and here I am. And even here though, UI artist is the job title I have, and that is in my like job description. But it's sort of UX UI designer as well, and I also spend half my week doing marketing design. As well as that, it's funny you mentioned merch, but we're designing merch at the moment because certain conferences are coming up. So that's all kind of under my role as well. So I kind of get to try many different things, which is great.
Classic game dev role of everyone doing a little bit of everything, helping each other out, that kind of thing. But you noted where you started and with studying design and all that kind of stuff. But did you always think you were going to end up in games? Did you imagine you'd be here in the end?
No, not necessarily. I did study some game design at university, but I didn't even really expect to be able to do that, I must admit. Like, all through school, I took like triple science and was going to enroll in a BSc and like do all of that kind of stuff. And at university, I very much sort of thought that I was going to end up in a more, product design role or graphic design role, or maybe something more video focused. Which is great that I didn't, because out of all the things that I like doing, video editing is not one of them. But I enjoy everything else. So not definitely kind of a winding path here, and not one that I expected to actually come into, especially not like kind of now. So it's been kind of interesting and fun, and like, to clarify, like the other interactive design stuff that I've done has been really fun and really awesome, and it has its own value. But I've always loved games. I've loved playing them, and now I really love making them.
I can kind of agree with that. Having back when I was studying, a lot of the courses dabble you in a lot of different things of trying out games, trying out animation or visual effects and this and that. So it's really nice to be able to explore, I suppose, and try those things out. And the path doesn't have to be, I know what I'm going to do from high school and just straight shot it all the way. You can kind of wind and meander, like you were saying. Is there any advice you think you'd give yourself when you were first starting out, looking back now?
Starting out at uni, or starting out like kind of career?
I guess your path, I suppose. Yeah.
Kind of don't be afraid to change path. I think there were a couple times where I sort of stuck with something maybe longer than I should have, out of like either stubbornness, or I've spent money on this, or courses that really, the reason why I was struggling with them was because they weren't what I wanted to be doing. And that's true of like courses and side projects as well, and other things, and school as well, for sure. But definitely like give yourself space and patience, and allow yourself to change kind of at any point. Not that you should be constantly chopping and changing, but these generalist roles exist, and you can enjoy them.
Yeah, that's really sound advice, honestly. Of that often it gets drilled in at school and that kind of thing. Of what's your plan for life? Whereas it doesn't always work out that way, and that's okay. So. Yeah,
absolutely. And like I grew up in South Africa, and design was not even really presented as a pathway for me. It wasn't recognized as a university entrance subject at the time. I think it has now. But definitely didn't see myself working in interactive media. I certainly didn't expect myself working on stuff that relies on an internet connection, because I had a really bad one. So it's all these kind of things slowly reveal themselves to you based on your life journey as well. Like career and life journey are so intertwined, and not that career is your life, but they certainly affect each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and given all the different things you've tried, how do you think working in other fields has actually helped you in games?
Yeah, there's honestly heaps and heaps of ways. Like, even throughout university, I worked at a school, which was great. Kind of learning perspectives of small children, and guiding children through stuff like tutorialization. Starts very much at like, please play in that playground over there where we can see you. But there's that kind of stuff. There's also like, spent a fair amount of time doing like academia side of things. So like research and tutoring. And again, that's really helped me remember to like take a step back and research things and consider things, and like maybe find some data as well. Like very rarely is the thing you design going to be perfect, especially not the first time, as I'm sure you can attest.
Oh, I can attest to that.
And so it's really like it's been great to just remind myself to go and test it. Do that rigorous research, find precedent, and come back to it. And all of that sort of flow. And then in my last role, I learned heaps about general graphic design, taking stuff to print. Which has been super useful because we've just done a bunch of stuff that required print resource, and we're going to conferences that need like pull-up banners and posters and stuff like that, which has been super useful. But in general as well, like that, the thing I learned most was sort of considering the space that your things are going to be interacted in, right? And so we make mobile games, and so we don't really know that space. It could be on the bus, it could be at home, it could be like half paying attention or like fully engrossed. And like obviously certain mobile games designed for specific targets, but like remembering physical space is a huge thing that I learned from that role. And just remembering target audience, you know, like when you're designing really specific exhibitions for museums and specific museums and curators and visitors that have really specific target demographics, it's really easy to be like, oh, well, I would want this, but that's not actually what you're doing. That's not what you're designing. That's not who you're working for in that moment. And so that's been super valuable and something that I like still have a lot of and like bear in mind when designing things now.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really insightful. I also really like the example of tutorialization through kind of teaching kids and telling kids what to do. I never thought of it that way, but even I guess when I'm with my nieces and nephews and trying to guide them to do something, maybe in a weird way I'm honing my game design skills, which is cool to think about.
Yeah, they have the most intuitive, like interactive approach, but won't read anything. So it's like it's a great like test for designing interactive media.
So true. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steph. As always, if you've got questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will hopefully have some time to chat through them at the end. But for now, thank you again. We're going to jump onto our panel of juniors now. Loading on up. Bam, bam. There we go.
Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
Solid. Doing good.
All right. So, who wants to introduce themselves first? Who wants to kick it off?
I'll go. Hi.
Do it.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Rory. I'm a game designer at PikPok, and I've been working I've just had my first year anniversary there. It's been great. And I'm very proud to be here.
Fabulous. And how about you, Larissa? Do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Larissa. I'm a UI artist at PikPok, and I've been there for a year and a half now. It's been a while, but yeah.
Awesome. Bring us home, Darren.
I'm Darren. I'm a lead developer at CerebralFix. I've been here for 3.5 years now. We're a work-for-hire studio in Christchurch.
Awesome. Thanks for introducing yourselves. We're going to crack straight on into it because we've been filling every slot for time. So to start with, I guess this is the funny question that we get asked a lot when we work in games. What do your friends think you do versus, say, your parents and that kind of thing versus what you actually do? Because I know I get this question all the time, and it's a hilarious thing to try and discuss. We'll start with Darren. We'll go back the other way.
Yeah. So I asked my family this the other day. My brother said, I'm pretty sure he just plays StarCraft all day, and there's like a Zoom call in the background. So I'm going to go with that. No, what I actually do is I'm a developer, so I write the code that makes the game do things. I make features, I implement UI, I do a lot of bug fixing, I do a lot of documentation. As part of like the lead side of things, I also talk to clients directly. I'm talking with our artists and our QA and all the other disciplines. So a little bit of everything.
Safe to say, talking across all the different disciplines is a big one by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
And Larissa, how about you?
Sorry, my thing's a bit delayed, so I get.
That's all good.
So my friends think that I make literally the entire game. They my non-dev friends, because they have no idea what different disciplines are. My parents think I'm a graphic designer, which is close enough. I guess I kind of, make pretty UI on a screen. It's close enough. And I'm actually a UI artist, so I just handle all the user interface, the way it looks, as implement it into the game engine. Yeah, that's me.
The graphic designer comment is not far off. I've heard worse interpretations.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how about you, Rory?
I guess I'd probably describe mine. My parents think I come up with a bunch of ideas and then just throw papers at other people to get it done. And as most of the time, what I'm actually doing is holding a bunch of pieces of paper in my hand, begging someone else that it's worth doing. That's probably the big difference in my design role.
Yeah, I can totally attest to that. Everyone I know who isn't in the industry just assumes that I have all these ideas constantly flowing, but in reality, design is kind of coalescing the whole team's ideas into something and then asking them to implement it, like you say.
Please.
Oh man. So next thing, I guess, I'm assuming that you all went to university, but did you all study? What did you guys study?
I studied computer science at Victoria in Wellington.
Sorry, mid-drink. Rory, how about you?
I actually studied software engineering up at MDS. I did the games programming course up there and sort of branched tangentially into design.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And how about yourself, Larissa?
Same with Rory. I studied up in MDS, got to represent them. I studied creative technologies, though, which is kind of game art, but it's a whole collection of things. It wasn't specifically to do with UI.
Yeah, a lot of, as I was saying with the chat with Audrey and Steph as well, a lot of those courses are wildly varied, and I think some of the best experiences you get from them is actually just collaborating with people like yourselves and learning to work across those different disciplines and produce something at the end of it, whatever that looks like.
Something's a good term. It's not always a game.
Yeah, it's a thing. It does, hopefully. And I guess this next one, I'll throw it to Rory. But how did you go about applying for the role? What was the application process and all of that kind of stuff like?
Oh boy. Well, mine was a sort of almost a scouting. MDS had a bit of a situation going where companies were going by saying, "Hey, who have you got? Who's interested in a role?" And it just became a nab and grab of what's all rushing to a door saying, me, I want to go. And we all tried to get our 5 minutes in the limelight and just make the best impression we could in like a snapshot. And that's how I generally got started and got my interview process started, was just there was an opening available to talk.
That's a pretty exciting way to go about it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Darren, did you have a more traditional experience, I suppose? Or?
Possibly. I actually spent a year off after I finished uni trying to get into the games industry. And so I think on like the 27th of December, I found the job ad on Seek and applied then. So made it in at the last minute.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
And Larissa, how about you?
Mine was not smooth sailing. I'm just hearing like all their, process. I'm like, wow, that sounds nice. But similar to Darren, a year after, I was just job hunting. I was actually working at a cinema at the time, and anytime I had a break, I was like trying to learn about UI and just like doing these like weird little sketches on like the notepads that I stole from the back. PikPok actually rejected me 3 times, but I was very persistent. But they were very good in terms of actually giving me pointers on how I can improve. So every single time I would be like, please tell me, please, like what is it specifically so I can go and improve it. And then, yeah, I guess 4th time's the charm. I finally got in.
Well done you for being that persistent, and I guess it's really cool too that in an industry, especially in New Zealand where the community's this small, you can just ask questions and ask for pointers and get actual responses, whereas I feel like in some bigger places overseas perhaps that's less likely to happen. So make the most of those opportunities here. I suppose is the best advice I can give. We'll stick with you, Larissa, because I want to know, is now that you're working in the industry and you have been for a year and a half, I believe you said, is it what you expected?
Kinda. I didn't expect the people. I I had this like curtain over me of how game developers are, and I didn't think they would be so friendly and so caring. And so, like I expected to just be surrounded by these intimidating like professionals being like, do this, do that. But it's really like very open and just lovely. In terms of the work, I feel like MDS did a really good job of kind of showcasing, especially in the last year, how a game developing team might work. It's less stressful, obviously, since we're more organized. But yeah, the biggest factor is just the people. They're a lovely bunch.
That's really cool to hear. And Darren, do you feel the same way? Or have you got any other tidbits?
Yes, certainly the people is like such a big part of games. Like that's why I love it so much, right? Is it's this huge collaboration between all these different people with very different backgrounds. Maybe I guess like CerebralFix is like slightly different because we're work for hire studio. We're not working on our own things. So like one of the biggest shocks, I guess, like something like that is that all of our work is under non-disclosure. So I can't talk about anything. Like go home for Christmas and you're like, what do you do for work? I'm like, I work on games. I can't tell you anything. Okay.
The classic NDA. I'm working on something new.
That's cool. That's exciting.
No, I've definitely been there before. I know what that's like. And Rory, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just gonna copy Larissa here with such a great answer. Definitely the people. That big shock of going from expecting a tyrannical on your back thing to just a really accepting group of individuals. I think my classic one is about in my 3rd month on the project I was working on. I did an oopsie. And I released a piece of something live that was in front of players and it caused a bug. And, it was on community pages being like, hey, is anyone else seeing this? And I'm panicking. I'm straight up so scared. That's like, they gave me this amazing opportunity and they're going to fire me and I'm going to die. I am so upset with myself. And then, my leader at the time just comes over and goes like, hey, so there was a live problem. I'm like, yeah, that was me. It's like, that's all right. Let's work together. We'll fix it. And, just write down your process and we'll work on it better. It's like, oh, you mean I don't have to die? And he's like, why would you think that? Like, and it was a beautiful moment. So
you've also come perfectly full circle with what Chantel was talking about at the start of just owning your mistakes and like confessing to those kinds of things and like owning your weaknesses. And I think that's really important just for building character. And again, with a small, tight-knit community, just being a fun, great person to work with is actually a huge boon.
Yeah. No one's perfect. No one expects you to be, even if you expect yourself to be.
So even though you gave a good answer, you did also copy Larissa, so I'm going to stick with you for the next one.
Dang it. Fair enough.
Do you feel like you've learned a lot since joining the industry? Oh
yeah. And it's definitely it's the adjacent fields that I feel like I've actually learned the most in, because I'm a game designer, so I feel like, oh yeah, I know what GDDs are and all these things. Yeah, cool. But I didn't know how to read a Tableau report before I started, and now I just have all these number sheets that make me look so impressive when I'm talking about things now because I know how to read them. Yeah, and just all the little fancy Excel shortcuts that make my life a bunch easier. It's those little things that you don't actually consider and don't think about. The fact that you don't know these things that really crop up in the long term.
Mm-hmm. And Darren, how about yourself? You've been learning since joining the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of my friends I was talking to at NZGDC like summed it up really well. It's like, when your first like 6 months or 1 year in the industry is like your entire university degree, like twice over. It's like you learn so much in that first 6 months, 1 year period that you didn't like even conceive of at university. So much of it is like the soft skills or the core skills. And like all these adjacent, like how do you talk to people? How do you talk to a client? How do you talk to like different disciplines and like people, basically all of that stuff. So much learning.
And how about you, Larissa? Do you want to copy Rory this time around? Take it back.
Yeah, I'm gonna copy Darren actually. That was a good answer in terms of soft skills. I think that was the one thing that really, like, I really learned the past year and a half. Because like you can teach me Unity, you can teach me how to mock something up. Sure, like those are skills that you generate. But soft skills is something harder, especially when I joined and I was like intimidated by all these people and I couldn't talk to them. And now it's like I'm organizing meetings and I'm actually talking to like my product owner, and it's like looking a year and a half ago, little Larissa wouldn't have been able to do that. So I think it's a good learning soft skills is really really up there.
Yeah, and especially at a studio like PikPok, which is it's 180, 190 people now. I can't remember. It's been a year or so since I was there.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be a slightly loaded question, but we'll shoot it to Darren. Do you see your whole career in this industry? You want to stick around in games?
That is a question. I would love for my whole career to be in games. I think it's a tricky question because there's a lot of work that the games industry kind of needs to do to allow for that. I think like there's all of the crunch things. There's a lot of harassment cases and things like coming forward now, and like all of that needs to be addressed and like improved upon. It's like in New Zealand, I think we're fortunately a little bit secluded from that, but like there's still things that go on and stuff like that, and there's a lot of work to be done still. And so yeah, like I would absolutely love for games to be my lifelong career, but we'll see what the future holds and how much burnout can I take.
All right. It's one of the cool things too about being sort of somewhat newer to the industry is we can, and especially in a small version, it's kind of a small amalgamation of the industry here in New Zealand, we can shape it into what we want it to be. So yeah, I guess that's one of the big things. Rory, how about you? You planning the long haul for games?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was one of those ones where I was in the schoolyard trying to convince my friends to play this card game I just invented. That's totally fair, guys. Trust me. So I definitely reckon I'm in for the long haul. But yeah, echoing Darren, I think there's lots we can do, but it's up to us. We're the new gen, I guess. So it's up to us to make it better for the people who come after us too.
It's really cool hearing about you've been aiming for it since school. That's really exciting too.
Oh yeah. I learned how to write, and then I learned how to try and make a game. They were never good, but I was trying.
And Larissa, I assume the same? You've been trying to break in. I don't imagine you're looking to get out.
Yeah, I already crawled in. I can't crawl out. No, video games is just a passion that I've had since I was younger. So I've always wanted to stay in video games. Being, considered a minority in games, you hear all these horror stories, kind of like Darren said, but I kind of knew that going into it. I'm just like, I'll handle it when I handle it, that sort of thing. And I'm inspired by creating games for players. So as long as there's players, I'm not leaving. So I'm here for the long haul.
That's such a good point. It's so exciting to put things out there and actually, especially in this day and age when we've got streamers and stuff, see people playing the thing and see the reaction. Oh, yeah. Super inspiring just to see people playing. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna close it up with one last question of the advice you'd give to it can be your former self or someone applying for your position in the future. But Larissa, what would you pass on?
Learn to fail. I think that's the best one. I failed many times. I've had so many, rejection emails and all of that. Just keep trying. Email them. There's even after the process, ask them what you could improve on. The worst thing they can do is not reply. The best thing they can do is reply and give you pointers. So I would say fail. Don't be afraid of it.
That's honestly really good. I wouldn't be shocked if both Darren and Rory just say, yep. We're going to give them a go. So Rory, what do you think?
I've already copied Larissa once. I'm not doing it again. So my advice would definitely be, if you're looking to be a designer, soft skills. Like, learn to talk to as many people and as many different people as possible, because I would say about 5% of the job is actually designing a feature, and 80% is convincing people it's a good idea, regardless of whether it is or not. So I would say learning how to do that as best as you can is the goal. Just talk to anyone.
Hopefully you're pitching the good ideas.
I like to think so, but sometimes you never know.
And Darren, I saw you go, damn it, when he gave his
Yeah, stole my answer.
What's your answer?
Yeah, soft skills 100%. That's like the biggest thing, and that's the thing that you've got to kind of learn yourself. Like, I can Google how to write some code, or I can Google like, how do I use Unity? But like, watching a video on someone giving a lecture or something is not the same as giving one. That for sure, yeah.
That's very true. I'm going to open it up to questions from the chat now, and while we wait for those to may or may not filter in, we'll see how we go. I do actually have an extra one here of now that you've been in the industry for a while, have you found that working in games is the same way as you imagined it before you started? And I guess I should pick a person. We'll go with Darren. We'll stick with you. Yeah.
Is the games industry the same as I imagined it? I don't know what I imagined the games industry to be. I thought it was like, I don't know, I want to work in the games industry. I remember, like, you know, in primary school playing Warcraft 3. I'm like, yeah, I want to make games. I don't know that I knew what it was like in reality. It was like this weird fantasy.
Yeah. Just the classic, I like games and I want to make games.
Yeah.
And it's really of a concept.
Let me make them? Yeah.
Rory, any thoughts from you?
It's honestly way better than I anticipated. I thought I was getting prepped. Like, I had bought like a tent and stuff. I was ready to like camp out in the office, pee in a bottle. You know, I was like ready for the worst scenario. It was gonna be. That's what I was. I was like, oh man, this is gonna suck, but I'll do it for games. So many people had fed me horror stories after horror stories, and then I got there and I'm like, oh, y'all are really cool. Oh, wait, hold on. This is just a cool place with people who want to make things just like me. Why did I think otherwise? And obviously that'll be different place to place, but I've been amazingly pleasantly surprised.
Cool. And before we potentially bring back in some of the previous guests, Larissa, you got any other thoughts?
Just echoing of what I said earlier, like, it seemed like this big VIP club that I couldn't get into. And it's, you know, these intimidating people, and it's just, everyone's so nice, everyone's so inspiring. So I think it exceeded my expectations, I would say, when I actually finally got in and be one of the cool kids.
That's so cool. I'm glad to hear it. All right, I'm gonna throw to Jennifer, who's gonna hopefully bring back in some more people. I'll invite Chantel back over to the couch.
Been walking back in. Not that I can moonwalk at all, but
you tried, and you also and you announced yourself doing it as well, just to really put it in there. So I saw this one here earlier, actually. For either yourself or for Audrey, what do you look for in a portfolio, whether it's art or design or coding? We'll start with you, and then we can throw to Audrey as well.
Yes, well, I suppose they're all a little bit different across those three different disciplines, and it will depend on the role itself. I would say we definitely hide a few clues. Well, we don't hide them. We place very obvious clues into the job ad of what we're looking for. So it's an art role, and we're looking for an artist on our mini games. We will often be looking for someone that has a really good graphic design eye, because our games have that kind of aesthetic. And then in terms of their portfolio, just seeing a bit of variety throughout and just really well-rounded execution. Then what we'll tend to do is we'll be able to find out any more answers to our questions in the art test phase. But yeah, it kind of depends on the stage that you're entering. If you're in a more senior role, for example, then we're probably going to be drilling it down to a lot more specialty. So if we're looking for a programmer, we're probably going to be looking for one who has experience in games like ours with code bases similar. But in a more junior role, we understand that we're just looking for potential, and a really lovely person who's going to work well with our team, add some new perspective to our environment, and again, just that potential shows that they have a bit of passion for this space. So would say look at the job ad, see what's in there. Generally, we will kind of tell you what we're looking for, what type of art style we're looking for. And other than that, it's just researching our games, seeing if that's something you have experience in or something you would like to have experience in, expressing that in your cover letter.
Cool. And Audrey, any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think those are really great points, Chantel, and to narrow down to make sure, they're a good fit for your team and make sure they've done the research. I think for media design school, I was really lucky to see their class projects, and I could see very easily, based on quality and what they came up with, what teams are successful because they created an amazing product. So I think it boils down to, it showed the collaboration, it showed the quality, and all those things are needed. So you knew all those skills were in those candidates, and which is why I grabbed them all. Yeah.
That's the smart way to do it. Awesome, thank you. And we've got one here from Chris. I'm moving to Christchurch next year and wanting to begin a new career in this field. What are your thoughts on studying online compared to on campus? I suppose we can throw this to our panel from earlier. So if any one of the juniors, maybe Rory or Darren or Larissa, wants to jump in on that one. Thoughts on studying online?
I guess I could say a little bit. I had a couple friends who studied with various things. I've had people who studied at UB and various different courses. I guess there's the connections part is really the big difference, right? It's who you get to meet and the opportunities you get. If you're in a physical space, you're going to be, having coffee with these people or whatever on a relatively frequent basis that you don't get if you're doing an online course. But if you can supplement that in other ways, going to events and all sorts of other things, then I've seen it work. Other people have made it work. It's possible, but maybe a bit harder.
I'd also just add in as well that we're all working in a kind of hybrid model at the moment. Like a lot of us are working semi-online at the moment as well. So it's kind of a reality of the situation at the moment. And so I don't there's definitely things you lose out on, but a lot of those tertiary institutions are trying to supplement that in other ways, and you yourself can supplement that in other ways as well, through volunteering or reaching out to people in your course or outside of your course, or the game development communities here in New Zealand as well. And I've seen you pop up, Chris, in the Slack and some other spaces, so that's already a great start. And yeah, a lot of us are working in pretty, only recently have we started having a kind of, more people in the office, but even that, we're still only 60%, maybe a bit more. But yeah, learning to work with people online is not a bad thing.
It's a very good point in this day and age. We're here at Dinosaur Polo Club, we're pretty similar, probably 60, 70% maybe in the office. Yeah.
So we tend to have a bit of a split. We let people work from home, particularly right now, if it makes them feel more comfortable. But something we do notice is that a lot of us are still drawn to being in the studio because we have fun banter. And also when you're working within a creative team making awesome things together, there's just a level of collaboration that happens when you can overhear conversations and organically join in. That doesn't necessarily happen when it's a scheduled meeting that everyone's joining to go through a specific agenda. So online, when we went through the pandemic, we created meeting spaces that people could just hang out in during the day and chat. So there was that kind of workplace banter. It does happen differently in an in-person environment. And we do find that leads to some really wonderful moments and hilarious quotes and also awesome products.
Yeah, invest in a quotes chat for recording those perfect moments. It's well worth it.
Out of context, it's beautiful.
And now there's one here that I actually missed a little bit earlier from Liam. Hallie, I'm interested in becoming a narrative designer / a games writer in the future. particularly interested in perhaps pursuing this abroad. What can I be doing in New Zealand right now to help me achieve this goal? I'm not sure if anyone in the panel has particular narrative experience, but we'll throw it out anyway. And if anyone's got any thoughts.
I can just jump in with a quick thought that I think actually applies to anyone. One of the best things you can do is to look at the games that you really love the narrative design for, and look at indie studios as well as the big AAA. Find out who did the narrative design and reach out to them. That's what LinkedIn's great for. And just ask that person if they'd be willing to catch up for like a one-off coffee. Honestly, a lot of us do that quite frequently, where you basically get that mentorship. If you can find a mentor, awesome. That's just so invaluable. But most people will happily have a coffee with you. You know, they'll happily give up half an hour of their time because they were there. They know the things that they would have loved to have heard at the beginning of their careers. So I would say reach out to the people that inspire you, and you'll be surprised how many actually take the time to have a chat, and you can learn so much from those conversations.
I'm sensing a theme tonight of just chatting to people and asking.
Yes, building connections is one of the most powerful things that we often are not taught in tertiary education, but it is actually 50% of all of our roles is the communication that we have with our team, and that's what makes a great environment. It's not just the technical ability, it's actually how people collaborate together. And that's where the spark comes from, that's where the fun comes from.
Cool. We're technically at time, but there's a couple more questions I want to get through, so we're going to try our best. Jackal writes, what types of career paths are available for someone with an illustration background besides concept art? And I guess to some degree, Larissa's an example of that, Steph's an example of that. So
I'm an example of that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, you're an example of that. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, whoever wants to jump in on that one. Oh, I see the hesitation.
Steph, do you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, there's heaps of roles, and I didn't come from a strictly illustration background, more graphic and media design. However, like it's been super useful having that as illustration skill in my role as a UI designer and a UI artist. In particular, that's definitely one of the strong pathways that a lot of people do find themselves on. On top of that, and this is a little tricky because even at my studio, I wear this different hats situation, but like a marketing designer is still super invaluable to most studios, be that contract or full-time. And you know, that's bespoke motion graphics or illustration as well, both static and moving. And that's also, you know, stuff around branding and marketing and yeah, just general assets. You know, that we do heaps of like marketing ads for each of our games, you know, and we have 6 games that are live. And so each of those, you know, have their own UA runs, and they also all have stuff on the App Store and App Store assets that we're constantly like testing what could be the best, you know, versions of those. And all of that is, you know, graphic design or illustration kind of led. And just generally like a 2D game artist. A lot of our artists are illustrators either in their spare time or were illustrators. A lot of them do, you know, freelance work doing illustration, or you know, have done book covers and stuff like that as well. We were all super excited because we just sponsored this exhibit here, you know, Targa Museum, and one of our artists designed like the ads for it, and they're on the bus backs, and we're like running around trying to like chase them and take photos, and we still not found a good one. But yeah, definitely like marketing and UI are 2 really, you know, key areas where that pathway can come in.
Cool. And sorry, Larissa, I keep forgetting that there's a slight delay for you, but did you have anything you wanted to add before we move on?
I think in terms of illustration, like you do have those hard skills, you know, of just like drawing whatever, but there's other skills like that develop your design eye, and I think that can translate to a lot of different roles within the studio. Like who knows, you could maybe try out UI, maybe, you know, go into a little bit of video editing and motion graphics and see how you can apply that knowledge. Like you don't have to be fixated on just illustration means concept art. I would suggest really just pursuing and just seeing other avenues. Maybe one of them will click more.
Cool. Thank you so much. We'll throw to, who haven't we heard from? Let's jump to Darren now with this question. Would you have any advice for someone still in high school thinking of going into game dev?
Yes. Do game jams. They're like the best way to get experience and meet people and to do all the things that you need to do to become a game developer. And that doesn't matter what role you're going into it in either. Like you can do a game jam as a programmer, as an artist, as a narrative designer, like all of the things that you need to do a game, like need to be in a game jam. So everyone should do game jams basically. Lots of like, it's such an easy way to meet people as well. Like it's really good.
That's the perfect answer, frankly. I see everyone nodding along, so I don't know what to do it really. We've got time for, I think, one more, so we'll finish up with something from Eva. So lovely hearing everyone's stories. Glad I managed to catch this talk. They're wondering how often are there job opportunities for junior artists trying to break into the New Zealand industry? How often do we have roles, do you think?
It depends on the department, but we tend to have a couple every year or two. We're a smaller studio, so we're about 24 people at the moment, but when I started, we were 9 people, and that was only 3 years ago. So I think what we're all trying to do as an industry is actually create essentially built-in mentors within our studios, people that can help upskill our juniors into becoming seniors themselves, because right now a lot of our seniors come from overseas, and that's not what we want for the future. We want to be able to foster that talent here. So our plan as a studio is to actually continue to grow that mentorship layer so that we can actually create more and more junior roles and give people the tools they need to grow in their careers. Because we have a training budget, we give everyone quite a lot of hands-on training so that they can upskill in their roles. So I would say it depends on the studio. I mean, PikPok, I think, is over 200 now. They're the biggest and oldest studio in New Zealand. They just celebrated 25 years. We are about 6 years old, but our game's 9 years old at the moment, but as a studio we're about 6 years old, and we're looking to actually grow a wee bit over the next couple of years, so you'll probably see more junior roles pop up there. But the industry on a whole is 950 people, but 3 years ago it was 450 people, and a lot of that growth is coming from all of you lovely people graduating and coming into the industry, and us really wanting to provide as many opportunities as we can to keep those jobs here and build you to be the mentors of the game devs of the future.
That was so eloquently put. That was lovely. and thanks for your question, Eva. We love hearing from you. Navi also put in the chat, in case anyone's interested, about game jams. There's a couple of examples of game jams in there, like Kiwi Jam, Pixel Jam, Global Game Jam, PB and Jam, which is the one we just had just recently. So keep an eye out for those in the future. I believe that's possibly all the time we have. So thank you everyone for joining us. This will be on demand as well to watch after the fact. So feel free to jump online and catch up on it again if you would like to. But thank you again from the team at New Zealand Games Festival and everyone here. And we'll see you next time, I guess. Next year, hopefully in person.
Next year, or at some of the NZ Games Festival events that are popping up over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So bye from us and the Dinosaur Polo Club studio.
Bye.
All right.